Hello again, Jared Pitts here, and today I'm going to be reading the second part of the SALT article on Joy Jones' website, Brewer Pregnancy Diet.com. And again, this goes right along with what Dr. Pete taught, and Dr. Pete actually references Dr. Brewer's research, and I guess the research of his wife, Gail Brewer, as well, references them quite a few times, specifically in his articles on water, swelling, renin, the kidneys, and angiotensin, things along those lines. And I'm sure his article on salt probably references the research of Dr. Brewer. So, again, DrBrewerPregnancyDiet.com, and we're going to be starting today on the second half of this article. Now, before I get started on this article, just wanted to remind you that you can use the links in the description of all my videos to get a certain percentage off from a couple of different companies. These discounts are for things that Dr. Pete researched and shared with us about, like aspirin, vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin K2, and things of this nature that you are most likely buying anyways. And if you use my link, you can support the channel. I make a little bit of money, and you get a certain percentage off buying that supplement. And these are companies that I buy from and have had good success using their products. Also want to remind you, you can email me with any questions, MissouriHealthCoach@gmail.com, or you can set up a free 15-minute consultation on my website, MissouriHealthCoach.com. Okay, without further ado, this is the second part of the SALT article from Dr. Brewer. Okay, and I don't think I read this part, so I'm going to read this right here. Please be aware that traveling and moving can break up your eating routine just enough to trigger a low blood volume problem, which can start the rising blood pressure, preeclampsia, HELLP, premature labor, IUGR, abruption process. And so you can see that these are all connected. Putting the brakes on that process can be more difficult than preventing it. Sometimes just being aware of this danger is enough to help you to remind yourself to continue providing for your nutritional needs, in spite of any changes and stresses which may be going on in your life. Okay, and some good advice there. I think, like they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Okay, so the following is reprinted from the Brewer Medical Diet for Normal and High-Risk Pregnancy by Gail Brewer, with Tom Brewer, MD, 1983. And in quotes, we have Group 11, Salt and Other Sodium Sources, Daily Exchanges, Unlimited, page 22. So here we go. Salt your food to taste. Cutting back on salt can cause a fall in the amount of blood circulating through your placenta, thus reducing the supply of nutrients passing to your baby. Too little salt in the diet leads to leg cramps as well, since all the muscles of your body require sodium for efficient action. And this is from page 46. So often we hear that too much salt is bad for us and that we should be cutting down on it. Why then do you say pregnant women should salt their food to taste? The last word on salt for non-pregnant people probably hasn't been written yet, but it definitely has for pregnant women. You need more of the sodium it contains when you're pregnant, ever increasing amounts, actually, as your pregnancy progresses. Sodium helps keep your placenta adequately supplied with blood, enabling it to pump nutrients to your developing baby. The salt you shake on your food is just one source of the sodium you need. There is also a good amount in most high-protein foods, such as milk, meats, and seafood, and in some vegetables. Of course, the more highly processed food you eat, the more sodium you're likely to be getting, since salt is used in these products both as a flavor enhancer and as a preservative. If you are a vegetarian and you think you've been avoiding sodium by eliminating salt from cooking, but you use kelp powder and soy sauce for seasoning, you're getting an essential sodium load from both. Your body signals when it needs more sodium by the taste buds on your tongue and in your cheeks that are sensitive to salt. When you need more, your food tastes flat and unappetizing, and so you add some salt. This is what we mean by salting to taste. We're not suggesting that you coat everything you eat with a mantle of salt. Although, even if you did, it wouldn't do any harm as long as your heart and kidneys are healthy, and you take in enough fluids to keep your body in balance. And I'm doing a deep dive right now into the whole RAAS, or renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. And a lot of the time when someone has bad responses to sodium, it can be because of a calcium deficiency. A lot of people are getting way too much phosphorus, not enough calcium. That balances off. And Dr. Pete always talked about how important it is to get a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio of calcium to phosphorus, which most people are not getting. And so once you fix that calcium deficiency, then the sodium, the RAAS system, starts responding appropriately. Okay? And nothing I say here is health advice. I'm just trying to share Dr. Brewer's research and also Dr. Pete's research. Okay, moving on. You have numerous mechanisms in your body to do just that, pregnant or not, because none of us takes in exactly the same amount of sodium day by day. There are wide variations both in sodium supplied and in sodium needed. The temperature has a lot to do with how much you need on a daily basis. When it's hot, you lose up to 20 grams of salt a day in your perspiration. This must be replaced in your diet. Otherwise, your blood levels of sodium fall to perilously low levels. And like he earlier in this article, like he discussed, or maybe it was his wife Gail Brewer, we have mechanisms to get rid of excess sodium, right? But when you are not getting enough sodium, or if you're like on a no sodium diet, where is your body going to get the sodium from, right? That is just one example. By the same token, if you are in an air-conditioned building and happen one day to eat lots of foods that are high in sodium, it would be possible for your blood levels of sodium to rise too high, except that your kidneys act to eliminate the excess through your urine before it does any harm. This action in the kidneys is automatic, one of the many self-regulating features of our bodies that most of us know little about, but which protect us from danger hundreds of times a day. During pregnancy, you need sodium to keep the correct concentration in your bloodstream. The amount of water in your blood that needs to be balanced increases by about 60% by the end of your pregnancy. To keep the correct concentration in the amniotic fluid that surrounds your baby and that the baby drinks, to aid your heart, which is just a muscle after all, and like all muscle, needs more sodium when called upon to do extra work, like pumping all that extra blood around for months, and to help your leg muscles, which carry your extra weight and often respond to lack of sodium by cramping very painfully, usually just after you've fallen asleep at night. And that is the nice thing, that our bodies give us these signals, right? Like the cramping of our legs, that if we learn to listen to these things, and there's a load. I've thought about doing a video on all the physiological signs and what they might mean, right? And so if you can learn to perceive these physiological reactions and signs and to know what they mean, then you can listen to your body more easily, right? And correct deficiencies and other things like that. Incidentally, we are not the only people encouraging pregnant women to salt their food to taste. As of 1983, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, or ACOG, now agrees. The manual that explains basic guidelines for ACOG members, Standards for Ambulatory Obstetric Care, Chicago 1977, states, quote, "Sodium is required in pregnancy for the expanded maternal tissue and fluid compartments, as well as to provide for fetal needs. The normal patient may use the level of sodium she prefers. Routine sodium restriction is not advised." This is big news because for years, routine salt restriction was the order of the day in obstetrics. Even now, 5 years after the ACOG changed its advisory to the profession, many doctors are still surprised to hear of it when it's brought to their attention. And popular magazines, newspapers, and other media also sometimes get caught publishing an article or a small feature in a pregnancy column, giving women hints on how to follow a salt-poor diet in pregnancy. Okay, so here's another portion from page 48. But if I salt my food to taste for 9 months, won't that cause a lot of swelling from excess water retention? Many women cut out all added salt during the last few days of their menstrual cycles. Anyway, because it helps get rid of the bloated feeling. Aside from the discomfort, isn't swelling a danger sign in pregnancy? It certainly can be a danger sign, but only when the swelling is caused by not eating enough of the right foods, including sodium-rich ones, or by a medical condition that would cause swelling in a non-pregnant woman or a man as well, such as heart failure or kidney disease. The swelling that accompanies the normal course of pregnancy while you are on the Brewer medical diet is attributable to an entirely different cause, your healthy, well-functioning placenta. The same hormones that you've noticed make you swell up somewhat just before your period, some women hold an extra 5 to 7 pounds of water, are made in ever-increasing amounts by your placenta as pregnancy goes along. By the 8th month, in the well-nourished mother, the placenta makes, every day, the equivalent of the hormones in 100 birth control pills. This swelling is not hazardous to you or to your baby. In fact, it's a natural way for your body to prepare for labor and breastfeeding by storing fluids you may need to avoid dehydration if your labor lasts a long time, and to establish and maintain quality milk production. And that's very interesting. I'm not entirely familiar with everything Dr. Brewer and Gail Brewer understand about progesterone and estrogen and what type of estrogen and what type of quote-unquote progesterone are in birth control pills, because if you've read any of Dr. Pete, you understand that taking estrogens orally may not be the best route, and also that birth control pills that are these, quote-unquote progesterone / estrogen birth control pills actually are using progestins, which do not behave like progesterone, right? They may have some crossover, but they have a huge estrogenic effect as well. And not only that, but they can also cause the body to not produce as much progesterone because the molecule, the progestins, are tricking the body into thinking it has these progesterone molecules, when in reality, they're a different molecule, right? So, but this is an interesting idea that he's covering here, that is there a healthy amount of swelling that can happen, and why is that physiologically important? And possibly because it's helping your body retain some water in case of long labor, and then also to produce milk with. But in general, from my understanding, edema and water retention, the swelling of cells, the excitation of cells, is a sign that you're probably not getting enough of something that your body needs, right? But maybe in pregnancy here, which I'm not 100% familiar with this specific topic that he's talking about, a healthy amount of swelling. Maybe there is that in pregnancy, right? And also we know that when estrogen does go up, progesterone, our bodies are creating a massive amount of progesterone in pregnancy, and this is a huge part of it is to maintain that pregnancy and also to protect against the negative effects of estrogen. So a lot of these graphs that show the difference or show what estrogen does throughout a cycle or throughout pregnancy overlaid with progesterone, they have to bring down the line that's showing the progesterone, because you have like 100 times more progesterone than you do estrogen, right? And so it's just orders of magnitude greater, the progesterone that your body's creating to sustain this pregnancy and to protect against the estrogen that is also being created in pregnancy. Okay, moving on. Though all swelling may look the same, the situation inside your body is critically different when you are swelling on a good diet. On a nutritionally sound diet, your liver has all the building blocks it needs to manufacture adequate amounts of a protein, albumin, that holds water in your circulation, the primary means by which your increased blood volume needs are met during pregnancy. The larger volume of nutrient-rich blood servicing your placenta results in the larger production of female hormones, and so more water retention than in a mother with average nutrition. It is possible for your tissues to hold 10 to 15 pounds of fluid for this reason without causing much change in your appearance. Perhaps the fine lines in your face disappear and your rings feel somewhat tighter. And Dr. Pete talks about this, where people will take estrogen and they'll think that their skin is becoming healthier, right? And it does have this edema response, this water retention response in our cells. And so women will say, oh, it was the estrogen that helped my skin look healthier, when in reality, it's going to degrade it faster over time and age your skin faster, right? The edema is kind of hiding the lines, essentially. But in the long term, estrogen is going to age your skin much more quickly, okay? And we're talking outside of pregnancy and when women get on HRT and things like this. But obviously a little bit of a different story here, and the progesterone is so incredibly high to protect from the negative effects of estrogen during pregnancy, right? And estrogen is this hormone of multiplication, of proliferation, because you are proliferating cells in order to create another human, right? The human is there and it is growing quickly, right? Lots of proliferation, and estrogen is there for cell proliferation, not only with the baby, but also with your body and things that are growing, right? Like the placenta, things of this nature. Okay, moving on. The quote-unquote hidden water retention in the well-fed pregnant woman, plus the increased size of her baby, has seldom been accounted for in the charts that break down the components of average weight gain in pregnancy. So they typically show a total of 24 to 28 pounds, whereas women on the Brewer Medical Diet gain, on the average, 35 to 45 pounds. Of course, many women gain less and many gain more, based on their pregnancy weights, metabolism, and activity level. We do not use the average as a rule, either a floor or a ceiling, for weight adjustment in pregnancy. It only demonstrates that the average figure you see elsewhere fails to consider the additional, beneficial water retention that comes with a good diet. When your diet is not meeting your nutritional needs, the internal events are exactly the opposite. If the liver is undersupplied with the nutrients needed to produce albumin, and this is one of the most complicated functions the liver performs, so it's one of the first to go when nutrients are scarce. It cuts back. The decrease in production is detectable by analyzing a sample of blood. Anything below 3 grams per 100 cubic centimeters of serum indicates a problem. With less albumin circulating and drawing water into the circulation, water that should be held inside your blood vessels cannot stay there. Instead, it leaks out into your tissues. Voila, you're swelling up. And the scales tell you about the water you're retaining, but they don't tell you where it is, nor do they tell you that your blood volume is falling below the needs of a healthy pregnancy, and that your placenta is starting to malfunction because of the reduced amount of blood flowing through it. Okay, and again, this is part of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. As you have less blood volume, your kidneys are signaling, red alert, and they're creating renin, which is then cleaving to this angiotensinogen from your liver, and it's creating angiotensin, and this is an inflammatory process that causes more water retention. And a lot of these inflammatory processes, like we know, are kind of self-amplifying, so that the more it happens, the more it will happen, and because if you don't change your habits, like he's saying, change your eating habits, your nutrition, then it's just going to continue to get worse and worse a lot of the time. Again, an ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure. The pregnant woman on a poor diet, or even one on a basically nutritious diet who is not eating enough to meet her calorie needs, is not swelling from the influence of an increase in female hormones generated by a generous, healthy placenta. She is experiencing a shift of essential body fluids out of her circulation and into her tissues. If the situation continues, her other critical body organs like the kidneys, liver, heart, lungs, and brain become adversely affected by the dwindling blood supply. The kidneys respond, for example, by raising the blood pressure, and her baby begins to suffer intrauterine malnutrition. Most commonly, this situation is diagnosed after a few weeks when the baby's failure to grow is noted at subsequent prenatal appointments. The medical terminology for this condition is intrauterine growth retardation, or IUGR. If caught early enough, the situation can be reversed with appropriate nutritional intervention by getting the mother on a diet suitable for her pregnancy needs and keeping her on it for the rest of her pregnancy. This includes salting to taste. So again, this is the difference between storing water in tissue versus having that increased blood volume that is so important to sustain a pregnancy, a healthy pregnancy. Swelling on a good diet is a sign of health in pregnancy. So, salt to taste as an integral part of your pregnancy nutrition program. Do not restrict salt. Do not take diuretics or appetite suppressants to control your weight. Any of these actions is a direct attack on the expansion of your blood volume and places you and your baby in jeopardy for the most serious pregnancy complications. All right, then on page 50, he says, the ACOG statement says, quote-unquote, normal patients can use all the salt they want. When would a pregnant woman have to restrict salt? And here's the answer. If she had any medical condition that was causing a backup of fluid in her circulation. The major problems that cause this are failing kidneys or heart disease. These mothers have an excess of fluid in their circulation, and sometimes in their lungs as well, which means that by cutting way down on salt and all other foods containing sodium, plus some judicious diuretic therapy in most cases, the excess fluid can be mobilized and eliminated. Of course, such a mother should be in the hospital where her conditions can be carefully controlled. Salt restriction is not warranted in cases where the blood pressure is rising, unless there is also this fluid buildup in the bloodstream. More about this aspect of salt and medical management of complicated pregnancies appears in Chapter 6. Then on page 51 we have, does it make any difference if sea salt or refined salt is used? And the answer here is no. Both contain the same amount of sodium, which is what we're primarily interested in here. However, some people prefer to avoid the additives in refined salt, added to make it easier to pour, for example. Right? They put like the anti-clumping agents in there. And so prefer sea salt. All salt, of course, was at one time in the sea, and sea salt retains all the trace minerals that naturally occur, including iodine. And I'll also note here that it also contains more contaminants, right, which can be a problem. And even some of these trace minerals, right, quote-unquote trace minerals, they're seen as this, but in reality they can be viewed more as a contaminant than anything else. The trace minerals are stripped from refined salt in production, so make sure you select iodized salt when you buy it. This is especially critical in areas of the country where the level of iodine in the soil is low and people don't get iodine in their diet from any other source. And Dr. Pete noted in his research on iodine that you really don't need a ton of iodine, right? People that are suggesting, I can't remember, I think Dr. Brown might be the guy, the main proponent of supplementing large amounts of iodine. There can be big problems caused by this, where it suppresses thyroid function and increases thyroid stimulating hormone or TSH, things like this, and just some inflammatory processes that you don't want to go down. So really do your due diligence in regards to if you're thinking about following Dr. Brown's protocol and doing high iodine stuff. Really do your due diligence. There's a lot of information out there from Dr. Pete in regards to high iodine supplementation and the dangers of it. Okay, moving on. Page 140, we have a question that says, do my sudden desires for pickles at midnight and pistachio ice cream for lunch have any significance in pregnancy? Is it okay to indulge? Go ahead with pickles and ice cream. The pickles have a lot of sodium, which you need in increased amounts to help maintain your big, expanded blood plasma volume. The same applies to salted nuts, sardines, anchovies, aged cheeses, anything cured with salt or kept in brine. The ice cream, if it's a quote-unquote natural brand made with real eggs and milk, contains good protein and calories you need. And I'll say that I, personally, and my family, we eat Haagen-Dazs vanilla, chocolate, coffee. I think those are like the three ones that don't have, flavorings and things of this nature. And they're made with egg yolks. There's no gums in those. As of this time, there's no carrageenan. Oh my goodness. It is very disappointing reading ingredient labels in the ice cream aisle. I'll tell you that. I've read every single one. And these are the three that we eat: vanilla, chocolate, and coffee. And sometimes we'll eat like the pineapple and coconut one or the strawberry one. But that's what causes problems with the ice cream out there, is the gums and the carrageenan. It is so hard on your gut, causes massive problems. Specifically, carrageenan is so incredibly bad for you. So, but when you get these ice cream cravings, man, Haagen-Dazs vanilla is where it's at. And we'll throw some sundae toppings on that, and it doesn't get much better. About the only food cravings that can prove a problem are those for non-foods such as clay or laundry starch, or for highly refined grains and sugars that provide little but calories. Eating clay and starch is a cultural phenomenon. Young girls see their older sisters and family friends do it when they become pregnant, so they pick it up when their turn comes. Some students of this practice report that clay eating was a common African custom that probably originated in times of famine, just as a way of keeping the stomach full, thereby preventing hunger pangs. Interesting. I've never heard of this. Eating starch often substitutes for clay eating when clay is unavailable, as in metropolitan areas. Starch provides many calories, but it offers no other nutrients. It is a hazard in pregnancy because it fills the stomach without contributing anything to your protein, vitamin, or mineral requirements. The same can be said of most commercial baked goods, pre-sweetened cereals, alcohol, soda pop, candy syrups, and many prepared foods. And so, I'll say this, that starches tend to not be able to be digested quickly enough, right? That's the beauty of something like ice cream, because you've got good protein, good fat in there from all the milk and egg yolks. Eggs are such an incredible protein. And then it also comes with the sugar to give your body the energy it needs to utilize that protein. And the fat is helping slow down the process a little bit. But you're able to digest that quickly. Whereas a starch is going to make it down through your intestines. And it's going to feed the bacteria, creating endotoxin and poisoning your body, essentially. So, totally agree with that part of it. And the clay thing, never heard of that. That's very, very strange. In general, choose foods from the market in as close to their natural state as possible. Cook them at home to preserve the most nutrients and satisfy your daily exchanges before you eat anything else. That way, your food cravings will not substitute for the foods that give you the most nutrition overall. Then on page 141 we have, I've been going to my doctor for 10 years and I really like him. He's never too busy to answer my questions. Last week, though, at my first prenatal appointment, he handed me a diet that he says he likes all of his pregnant patients to follow. It's so different from yours. I'm confused. Surely my doctor wants me to have a healthy pregnancy, but I don't understand how his nutritional advice could be so out of date. Only 1,200 calories and very low salt. It makes me wonder about the way he will view other things I feel strongly about. No monitor during labor, a chance to breastfeed right after birth, early discharge from the hospital, use of the birthing room, etc. Should I try to talk this over with him? How can I find out if there are any nutritionally informed obstetricians in my area? And here's the answer. Talk it over with him by all means. He may be educable. And even if he turns out to be resistant to new concepts in prenatal care, that doesn't have to stop you from following the best diet possible anyway, on your own. In fact, this is exactly what women everywhere have done for decades in the face of medical advice that ran contrary to their own sense of self-preservation. The standard routine of gaining no more than 2 pounds a month, no salt, and various drugs to control appetite and swelling. Clearly, if every woman who had ever been told to follow such a regimen had actually followed it to the letter, the hazards of doing so would have become obvious to the entire medical community, as well as to women themselves within a matter of a few years. There would have been precious few normal babies born. It's ironic that the extent to which women have quote-unquote cheated on this type of diet in pregnancy is the extent to which they've stayed healthy. Most of the time, in order not to offend or antagonize the doctor, women never admitted to not following the diet. They just broke the rules and pretended to be doing without salt and only eating half of what their appetites dictated. And doctors, not having the benefit of knowing what the mothers were really doing as far as their nutrition was concerned, continued to hand out the inadequate diets, feeling assured all along that the diet was an integral part of their quality prenatal care practice. The women who invariably wound up in trouble and who still do today, as of 1983, as calls to our hotline attest, are those who were extremely conscientious in carrying out the doctor's orders. They became a high risk for all the malnutrition-related complications of pregnancy, even if they had been very well nourished up until the encounter with the doctor's dietary advice. How this type of diet became a fixture in American prenatal care and the tragic consequences for the health of mothers and babies over the past 25 years were the subject of our first book, What Every Pregnant Woman Should Know: The Truth About Diets and Drugs in Pregnancy. That's from New York, Random House, 1977. Read this book for a complete explanation of your doctor's training in these matters. And this is why so many people are like, I don't know what happened. My friend who thinks about health and, is supposed to be the healthiest person I know, right? I don't know why they had, insert tragic medical event here, right? Like heart attack or, stroke or whatever. It's because all this medical advice, and I'm not giving medical advice here, but a lot of this medical advice people are getting is so terrible, and it only causes problems. Okay, moving on. As far as your doctor's attitudes about labor and delivery are concerned, we haven't been able to notice any correlation. Even the most progressive doctors, who subscribe to the most non-interventive style of obstetrics, are not always sharp on their prenatal management when it comes to nutrition counseling. Just because someone is willing to attend you in a birthing room and gives your baby a bath immediately after birth is no guarantee that your nutritional needs will be understood as you progress through pregnancy. Nor can you automatically assume that all midwives are well trained in nutritional management. Every potential care provider you interview should be evaluated according to the same set of criteria. Do not assume that anyone takes your nutrition seriously unless you specifically ask about his or her practices. Until standards for nutrition education for midwives and doctors are made a routine part of the required training curriculum, it's every woman for herself and her baby. If this were not so, there would be no need for this book. And here's a note from Joy Jones herself. I once worked with a home birth midwife who was vehemently, and I think I always say that word incorrectly, vehemently, okay, moving on, opposed to the use of the Brewer diet and often suggested to patients that they should cut back on their salt intake. And within 6 months of her joining our practice, we had 2 to 3 patients hospitalized for high blood pressure, preeclampsia, and or premature contractions, which was highly unusual for our practice. And again, this all comes back to this renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. It's called the RAS. When you lower your salt, you trigger this system to activate. And this system's whole purpose is to increase the sodium in your body, or retain the sodium in your body, increase your blood pressure, right? When you have crazy events that your blood pressure drops suddenly, you're losing blood. This is the system that gets triggered to increase your blood pressure, to keep you alive, to increase your blood volume. Okay, and this is a huge part of pregnancy, right? Retaining sodium and making sure the blood pressure is good and the blood volume is good, increasing the blood volume. But it has to be managed well. And it's very, very interesting, and these first-hand accounts of the consequences of lowering sodium. It's very awesome that Joy has this first-hand experience and can share it with us. That was Joy's note, and now we're moving on to what Dr. Brewer was saying. We maintain an active referral network to individuals experienced in pregnancy nutrition counseling nationwide. Many of these people are childbirth educators and nurses who have completed our prenatal counseling seminar and file counseling reports with us. Others are physicians, midwives, and dietitians who support the concepts and conduct their practices along the lines we describe in this book. As more and more women become sensitive to their pregnancy nutrition needs and actively discuss them with their doctors and midwives, the list of cooperative practitioners grows. At this time, the referral service is informal. A mother with a good report on a doctor or midwife notifies our office. A member of our staff contacts the individual and determines by the use of a questionnaire whether placement on the list is warranted. Again, the referral is highly restrictive. We are concerned about the nutritional aspects of the individual's practice. Therefore, this person may handle the labor and delivery in ways that are not compatible with an individual mother's preference. To request a referral or to make a recommendation, write the Foundation for Perinatal Education, Box 221, Bedford Hills, New York, 10507. And this is Joy's note. Since this was written in 1983, many changes have taken place, including the unfortunate death of Tom Brewer in 2005. It is possible that no one from the Brewer family receives mail at that address anymore, so I suggest that anyone interested in a referral contact blueribbonbaby.org to see if they have a referral list. And then we have another link here. That is the end of that section. Again, this is all on salt and kind of its connection to the RAS system, RAAS. Hopefully this has been helpful. Again, if you're pregnant and want to discuss anything in regards to this diet or health in general, please contact me at missourihealthcoach@gmail.com, or you can book a free 15-minute consultation on my website, missourihealthcoach.com. Looks like I'm going to need to do a third part on this article. Very long. I try to not make these videos too long because I know it gets a little clunky. Okay, until next time, God bless.